Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all.
Real estate experiment. What is happening, y'all? Today, I have the pleasure of having Todd Miller step into the lab with us. And I'm so excited to have Todd step into the lab from us, dialing in from Florida. Am I correct, Todd?
You got it. Jacksonville, Florida.
Listen, Todd, I always say when we have individuals like you, you're, a true embodiment of what experimenting is all about, because you've gone through a trajectory of a lot of different experiments and steps that you had to deal with along the way to get to what a lot of our listeners are optimizing for, which is exactly what we were talking about just now offline, is the financial freedom, multiple streams of income. That's probably the reason why we even get into the real estate space, because we see it as a proven model, proven vehicle. Now, you've taken a very interesting step. You went through the corporate. You also started double down with some experiments along the way that helped you. And at the age of 35, you were able to make that move and that transition. And I'm really excited to hear as well as what that number is, because we always talk about that financial freedom. We talk about it. And, I think you do a really good job of getting down to the root of what that really is, how to get there, and some of the tools and the experiments that have worked along the way. So without further ado, welcome to the lab, Todd. What's happening today, brother?
Doing well, Ruben. Thanks for having me. Really happy to be here with you and have a great conversation and add some value to the audience, and talk a little bit about money and real estate, some of my favorite subjects.
Absolutely. So if you and I, we talked about, I'm currently in Manhattan now. I do a lot of traveling. I go back and forth. I typically like to ask this question. I meet you at the airport. I shake your hand, say, hey, my name is Ruben. You say, my name is Todd. What comes after when I say, hey, what do you do for a living? What kind of work you do? What you getting yourself into these days?
The elevator pitch.
Yeah, what is that? Because I look at a guy like you. You've kind of done so much that I'm curious as to how you present yourself in these situations.
Yeah, for me, I kind of dive into, it's easy to talk about the past and some of the accomplishments that I've had, but really my focus today is helping busy professionals to use money in order to achieve their goals. And to me, a lot of that has to do with, living on a budget and living below your means so that you can produce this thing called savings, and then using your savings to invest in a vehicle like real estate, which eventually will help you get to that point of financial freedom and be able to go out and live whatever your dreams are.
Okay, so can you give a little context though? You talk about the history. I think you have a very great, more than qualified background to kind of be in the position to help others do this. Can you take us this little step back? I do like to give a little bit of context. I will interject because when I hear, gems being dropped, I have to jump on them. But take us a little bit back of before the Todd that you are today, and obviously hitting that milestone of being financially free, which we hear sometimes like, oh man, must be nice, but I'm still working towards there. Take us a step back in your world of what it really looked like on your way there, to give a little bit more context as we get into these conversations.
Certainly. Yeah. So I think my path started off the way many people does is, you're told to go to school and, work hard and get good grades. And with your good grades, you can go to college. And if you work hard in college and, graduate with a degree, then, you can work for a company, and that company will take care of you as long as, you're putting in the time and the effort and, producing results for them. So that's exactly the path that I took, as I'm sure most people do. I graduated from college with a degree in finance with honors, and then went to work for a global Fortune 500 company, and was pretty proud of myself at that point. I'd achieved the 20 plus year dream that my parents had set up for me. So I felt really good coming out of college, and went to work, and about 6 or 8 months later, I suddenly found myself jobless. I got laid off due to the Great Recession, and the company that I was working for, had to make some serious cutbacks, and went through several rounds of layoffs. And at some point in time, I got caught up in them, and found myself without a job and without an income. And honestly, my ego and my feelings were pretty hurt compared to what I was seeing with a lot of my peers when, they were flourishing in their careers, they were, getting promoted and that sort of thing. And I was kind of left down at the bottom and, searching for what I was supposed to do next and what that held for me. So that really led me down this path of personal finance and, what can I do in order to be more self-sustainable and not have to rely on a company in order to earn an income so that I can pay my bills and live out the life that I want to live. This was a pretty traumatic experience for me, looking back on it, being, in my young 20s, really not sure what direction I wanted to go in. And then, just trying to figure it out as I went. So that being said, I ended up finding another job, and this job was in mortgage banking. So I stuck with a bank for, about the next 12 years or so, and really gave me an opportunity to look at thousands of people's, financial situation. I was helping people get approved for mortgages, to buy a home or to refinance or to buy investment property. And during this time, I was fortunate because a lot of things kind of started to make sense to me, in that it really doesn't matter how much money you make. When it comes to building wealth, it really comes down to the amount of money that you're able to save. So while I was helping people get approved for these mortgages, I would be dealing with people that were making, anywhere from $100,000 a month. But yet they still weren't able to build any wealth. They had very little assets, were still living almost paycheck to paycheck, hadn't really built anything, were just continuing to spin their wheels. And then, looking at people that made significantly less than that, and comparing the two, I saw that, hey, these people that were making significantly less, sometimes they were able to put away a good deal of their money, and they were able to invest in things like real estate and to really build up their net worth. And, at some point in time, once you do that, work becomes optional. It doesn't have to be something that you go and you do every day because you need the money to pay your bills and support your lifestyle. These people had kind of figured it out. So, looking back, that's kind of what I started doing was, hey, the people that look like they really have wealth, they have real estate. And they have real estate that pays them to own it. Usually, they're making monthly cash flow, they have equity, they're getting all these tax benefits with depreciation along the way. And then me as the banker, I'm sitting here loaning them, 75% of the purchase price to go out and buy more. So it's just, like, wow, where else can you find an asset that you only have to put in, say 20 or 25%, and sometimes even less, to be a part of ownership. So that was pretty cool. That was exciting. This is really during the time of the Great Recession, when, you could go in and you could buy a property for, say $50,000, and on closing, when you took the keys, your net worth jumped up, say, 10 or 20% just by buying that property, because you were able to buy it right and buy it with equity. So then that really got me thinking is, so, if it takes the average person, let's say a year to save $10,000, but if you could go out and you could buy some sort of an asset, and that asset gave you $10,000 the day that you bought it, then that really speeds up your path to financial freedom, doesn't it?
Todd, I gotta stop you, man, because in the lab, what we do is we take notes, because that's what we do. We're extracting the wisdom, and you actually dropped so many nuggets that I gotta rewind, man. You said so many good things. Number one, let me ask you, because what I love about your situation is exactly what we always talk about in the lab all the time, right? You're in a position where you're it's almost like vertical integration. You have a job that's giving you the lens, that's giving you a little bit more education, that's giving you kind of an inside peek or a bird's eye view of like what's really happening. What you were talking about was debt to income ratio, which really hit me. I was like, oh, I gotta write this down, because this is so interesting. Because as entrepreneurs, I just had this conversation with my buddy Perry. And Perry, shout out to you when you listen to this. We were talking about how entrepreneurs, and this is kind of our avatar who's really listening to this. A lot of us play play a lot of offense, right? Like, how can we make more money, right? Let's play some offense. But what often happens is we don't play the defense part, right? Like you just said, and I see this all the time because I'm in the digital marketing space. There's people who are making tons of money, but they don't, from a, creating real assets and stuff. Maybe they're a little bit weak in that department. And what I want to go back to is kind of just highlight what you said about how you saw some people playing some great offense but poor defense. And I think you were literally just speaking about the debt to income ratio. Can you highlight? I want to highlight that point a little bit. Can you just pinpoint some of those things? And I don't know how much transparency you saw in some of those cases, but was it card notes? Was it, what kind of expenses do you typically see are really hurting people who are really trying to get to where you're at, and what you've been able to do, or what you've seen others who have had success in creating that treasure chest of having more savings so that they can invest? Again, savings is a means to an end. Can you highlight that? Because I think that's so important in this day and age.
Yeah, definitely. So like you're saying, it really comes down to living below your means, because the whole point that you want to live below your means is so that you produce the savings, and then the savings allows you to invest in these vehicles that'll set you free. So it's almost like a short-term, quote unquote, sacrifice in order to have long-term freedom. So the more willing that you are to cut down expenses, then the quicker you're able to amass money, the quicker that you're able to buy additional assets, and the sooner that you become free. It works out, mathematically, that's just how it works. So it really comes down to, how far are you willing to go? And that's going to be different for everyone based on, what lifestyle do you want to live now, and what lifestyle do you want to live in the future? And really answering the question of, what is enough money for you to feel like you are, able to support yourself and to have a good life. So looking back at a lot of these people's finances, when I was in mortgage banking, and now that I'm a money coach, is that a lot of it just comes down to high interest rate debt. And high interest rate debt is usually credit cards. It's just people just get caught up, spending based on the amount of money that they make, and usually then some, getting caught up with what their friends and their family and their peers are doing, which, causes them to overspend and take on more debt. And then they have these large payments that take up a significant amount of their income, which really prevents the ability for them to save money and to put it away and to invest in these assets.
Okay, cool. So can I have my cake and eat it too, right? Because now you're saying something that's interesting. What if, and again, I'm going to play devil's advocate, there's someone out there who's listening, hey, listen, Todd, I'm all for it, my friend, but listen, I want to enjoy the life while I'm also, grinding, right? People will say that, I think there's two sides to it. It's kind of like, well, yes, you sacrifice, and I'm a believer of that, by the way. I'm just want to hear, like, if there's another side that says, okay, can I have my cake and eat it too? What have you seen? Before I ask that question, maybe let me take a step back. You said high interest rate credit cards, etc., do the lifestyle, etc. What is one way you talked about buying a property, buying a home. I know you've done a lot of different things as the money coach. What are some vehicles or assets that I can put into place that I can allow me, if you think they can coexist, to continue to live that lifestyle, but I have to do things differently in the way I invest my money, I spend my money? What are some things that comes to mind first when it comes to being able to maybe have both? Do you believe that they can have both or no?
Definitely. Yeah. I had both when I was on my journey to financial freedom. It was, cutting out the expenses that really didn't matter to me. So what are some expenses that probably don't matter to most people? Let's just say insurance. As long as you have adequate insurance, does it really matter who your insurance provider is? So that's, one avenue to go out and shop your insurance bill and to cut that out. So it's really just taking a look at your expenses and seeing, hey, does this really add this amount of value to my life? If I'm spending, $500 a month on this expense, am I really feeling like I'm getting that amount of benefit out of it? Or am I just kind of in a habitual state where I'm used to spending, $200 on my cable and internet bill. So, I'll just keep doing it, no big deal, instead of looking for opportunities to, maybe cut that in half or cut that into a fourth or cut out cable altogether and find some sort of other alternative to go ahead and start and increase that savings rate. So for me, and most of my clients, there are certain expenses that are important. For me, it was always travel. I've always enjoyed, traveling around the world, going backpacking in foreign countries, climbing mountains, doing all sorts of, crazy stuff. But that's what really adds joy and are memorable experiences for me. So there's no way in heck I was willing to cut that out. But, there are certainly things in most people's spending that are, expendable, that don't really need to be there or can be reduced if not cut out altogether. We can talk about the coffee habit. If you're going out, for coffee and you're consuming, let's say a Starbucks every day, at some point in time, that coffee really isn't, you don't really taste the Starbucks coffee. It's just coffee, right? Your taste buds kind of get used to it. You're just like, this is what I always do. And then, you're just kind of really not getting that benefit. But if you take a step back and, maybe you use coffee more as a reward. So let's say you're willing to treat yourself to coffee on a Friday after you put in a hard weeks of work, then that coffee tastes extra good for multiple reasons, because, you haven't been drinking the same coffee every day. So it feels like a treat. And then B, you've put in all this hard work, so it feels like more of a reward. And when you're rewarding yourself in that way, when you're putting the reward out into the future instead of now, then that makes you develop this discipline of working hard now in order to have the benefit later, which you can use to translate into your business, into investing, into so many different areas of life that are beneficial.
Okay, so you're saying, because I was gonna actually challenge that. I'm curious to what your thoughts are on the coffee analogy. Are you saying that the coffee example is one that transcends and into other areas in your life?
Definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
I think everybody has habitual spending that they just are not aware of. And maybe it's not coffee. Maybe coffee is a very important thing to you, and that's fine. But I know in the people that I work with that there are definitely blind spots in most people's spending patterns.
Absolutely. What would you say in this day and age? We're listening to this. It's Q4 2021. What are some tools that you would advise someone in your circle, in your inner circle, to use to maybe highlight some of those spending, like maybe do a self audit? Do you go down that path of giving recommendations?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I mean, one place that you can do is you can go through, your last 2 or 3 months of expenses and just write everything down and assign it a category, and then go through and kind of total up all your categories, and then, divide it by your 2 or 3 months to get your average monthly expense. And then kind of going through each line item and looking at, hey, this is what I spent on, going to bars and restaurants. This is what I spent on coffee. Am I okay with these numbers? Did I feel like, looking back on these experiences, was it worth that amount of money that I spent? Or, maybe I would be more happy if I, increase spending in those areas in some instances. If you use, say, your coffee or your dining out to really go out and connect with your friends and family, then that could be something that's super important and something that you want to do more of. So it really just depends on each individual. Another thing that people could use is like a Mint or a Personal Capital, which really does all of this for you. So that all you have to do is, plug in all your bank statements and credit cards and then take a look and really see where your money's going, and then do the same kind of thing and seeing if you're getting the benefit where you're spending money. Or, another thing is to put your primary expenses in order of importance. So, you could go through and list out all of your expenses like we were talking earlier. And then, behind that, go through and put like a number one next to the one that's most important, and then a number two, and then list those out. And then if you're really spending based on what's important to you, then you should be spending the most on, on line item number one, and then 2, 3, and on down. But usually those start getting out of order. So if you're not really spending according to your values and to your priorities, then, you know, there's some opportunity to cut right there.
Hmm. Okay, I like that. Just because I think that gives folks listening a tactical approach to address the issue, which we love here in the lab. Now let's talk about the offense, because I think that was pretty good defense, and I think everybody should have defense wins championships, right? And what I love about what you're saying too, Todd, is like when we really think about it, and I want to get to this. I want to make sure this doesn't slip through the cracks, because you mentioned this. What is your number, right? And I think it ranges, because we always talk about this, whether you're making $1 million a month or $100,000 a month or $10,000 a month. It becomes relative to your expenses and your lifestyle, because maybe you're, the kind of car that you have, the kind of home that you have, the kind of lifestyle that you have, the activities, you're going on boats, or you're going to, like, it's all relevant, right? To a certain extent, I feel. And I'm not there yet where, making like multi-millions a month. And I'm, like some people have this extravagant lifestyle and all that. But I do think it is all relative. So as far as coming down with your number, just so, because I think we hear that a lot, financial freedom. Oh, what's your number? What did you make at 35, Todd? I think you're saying it's not about that number. It's about your number. Am I correct? Or did I miss the ball?
No, you're exactly on. My number is going to be different than your number, who's going to be different than somebody else's number. Then, everybody has a different number as far as what makes sense to them. So, everybody that I work with, they have different, lifestyle goals and dreams. And some people are willing to maybe reduce their lifestyle so that they can have freedom earlier. And other people are willing to, spend more time, grinding it out and saving money and increasing their income, because, when they reach financial freedom, their dream is at a different level than some of my other clients. So yeah, it's completely dependent on you and kind of what's most important to you.
Okay, so how do you, and again, you give us some great tactical advice on playing defense, but before you do for this part, what do you define as financial freedom?
Financial freedom is really the point where you no longer have to work for money. You have established enough passive income so that it covers all of your bills and then some, to be able to handle emergencies and that sort of thing, so that you're no longer
keyword and then some. Come on, I'm gonna go there. What is that? What's the
yes,
and then some? Give me something here, Todd. What do you got?
It's that buffer, it's
what's a good buffer for our listeners? Come on, man. 10%, 20, 30, 40 series. I'm curious. What is a good, because sometimes I want to hear it from you, because you're the money coach. So are you telling your folks, I think, I've heard maybe like 6 to 12 months. I think mine would definitely be, you got to at least be able to let at least 12 months. But I don't know. What do you see? And it's not, there's no hard rule. I'm curious. What do you think is a good something to shoot for when it comes to either buffer, or when it comes to either being able to, if all your if all your income stopped right away, I guess what we're going is we're also talking about passive income at the same time, because that would matter with savings. So I guess, how do you define it? I'm curious. I have you here. I don't know why I'm trying to guess.
Just tell us. Yeah. Well, you're coming up with your own definition, so that's part of the exercise, right? So for me, I wanted to have 6 months liquid living expenses, so that if for whatever reason passive income stopped, or there was some major expense that I needed access to capital immediately, that I would have it. But in addition, if you own rental property, then you also need emergency funds for your rental properties, because hey, sometimes things happen. Sometimes the hot water heater starts spraying water all over the drywall. And
yes, sir. Been there this year.
Exactly. I had one happen earlier this month as well. And it's like, okay, crap, I need a couple $1,000 to replace the hot water heater, rip out some drywall, and do some electrical work and this and that. And you need to have that money aside, because if you don't have that money aside, then you're scratching to find money, right? And when you're desperate to find money, what does that usually mean? Usually means that you're reaching for your credit card. And as we talked about earlier, that credit card has, high interest rates, usually higher than what you're going to be able to find by investing your money, right? So sometimes this is 18, 20% interest. And that's going to be detrimental to your long-term financial plans and your long-term financial goals. So this buffer is really, really there to, save your butt when stuff hits the fan, because it always hits the fan. It's really just a matter of when, not of if.
I like that. So let's talk about it. What are some things that when things are going well, and let's just start with the basic example of when you did have a job during these 11 years, what were you doing? And I'm going to ask you, what would you have done differently with what you know now? What were you doing that you think helped you get into that first maybe treasure chest where you started to, was it savings on its own, or was it a specific investment? I want to get into that.
Yeah. So for me, I'm more of a conservative investor. So for me, I've always been a big saver, because it makes me feel good to have money sitting in the bank and to know that I have this cash cushion in case, things hit the fan. So that way, hey, I got a little bit of time, I can support myself and kind of figure it out. Because again, I think for me personally, this goes back to when I got laid off in my early 20s. It was just such a surprise and such a shock to me that, that's kind of something that I've taken with me. And for me to feel comfortable, that's what I need. So again, that's going to be something that's different for everybody now.
Got it. Sorry. No, I didn't know if you were building on that. So you started building that savings to give yourself, because again, with the trauma, which we all have, by the way. So it's interesting that you went there. Then when you had the amount that you felt comfortable with, what was the first thing you were looking at right then, and what is the first thing you would look at today as things have evolved?
Yeah, it's tough. So when I was first getting started, this was really right around the Great Recession. So real estate was in decline. So that didn't seem like a good option at the time. Stock market was, I don't even remember what the stock market was doing, but definitely didn't want to be there. Bond prices were getting cut, so that didn't seem like a good place to be either. But at the same time, I had some friends who were starting to flip houses. And me being a mortgage banker, I decided to kind of leverage my expertise there and to start private lending to some of my buddies who were fixing and flipping these homes. So they would show me, kind of their purchase price, their estimated rehab, the rehab costs, and what they expected to be able to sell the property for. So I'd be going in at a, low loan to value, which, made me feel safe and protected. And then at the same time, I'd be able to make passive income for, the next 6 or 8 months while they are going through the process of rehabbing and getting the property listed and getting it closed.
So you were a hard money lender.
Exactly.
Oh, so how did I love this. So you were working at your job. You're like, okay, this is how this model works. And then your next step was I'm going to become the bank.
Exactly. Yeah. So I saw, let's think about it. Everybody's taking out all this debt, and the bank really just sits there and collects the check. And, that's one way to make passive income, right?
Yeah, that's a very smart way. I mean, the banks, I always say you guys are some gangsters, man. You guys know what you're doing.
The bank's got to figure it out, right?
Wait, so on that topic, because this is something I recently got into that I started bringing up a lot about, I'm wondering, are you into the world of infinite banking, whole life insurance, leveraging that, or is that something you're not tapping into?
No, that's not something that I personally have dabbled into or even explored all that much either.
Have you heard of it, or are you familiar with it?
I am a little bit. Yeah, I actually had my my life insurance license when I was like 20 years old, but for me, it just wasn't my thing from what I know about it. But no, if you have some information on it, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, we'll definitely share it. And I know to our listeners, I know we've had a few episodes on it, so we'll include that in the show notes to refer to it. But yeah, we can talk about it even offline as well. But I think it's been an interesting concept of how individuals are leveraging their whole life insurance with a mutual company paying dividends, right? And so essentially it turns into kind of like a personal line of credit, but when you borrow from that policy, which can't be modified, or else it becomes a I think in like an actual investment. So it's kind of neat that way.
Yeah.
So you can borrow against it, but you're not really borrowing the amount, the cash value that's in the policy, because that policy is in a fund. So as you borrow against it, it's still earning more than what you're borrowing for. And
Okay.
that I thought was fascinating. That's when I got into it, because it was like, oh, okay, so you're telling me it's like I can take this money and, become a private lender, like lend it out to somebody, but it's earning, let's say, it's earning 5%, let's say, and I lend it out for 12, but the amount that I'm borrowing for, I'm really borrowing it at a 4%. So I'm making 1%. It's still working for me. And then I'm using that money and I'm lending it out again and putting it to work. Very fascinating. I think you should look into it if you're that guy, because it's they're not all created equal. And so, guys, do your homework, and you can check out some of the episodes. Right, I am not a financial advisor at all by any means, but definitely tap into it if there's somebody in your network who's understands the infinite banking model. But good for you. So you got into. So are you still doing this today? Because this is something I'm very passionate about. I'd love to kind of maybe even. This is gonna be like a selfish question here. Is this something that is still happening, that you're still highly involved with today? Is this something that you kind of moved away from, and maybe I don't know, due to the economy or whatever?
Yeah, no, I've been doing this, I guess, for the last 11, 12 years plus now. So I'm not sure, what my personal volume and funding has been, but, it's pretty substantial at this point. And, a lot of asset classes, I'm not a financial advisor either, just to throw that out there, but a lot of asset classes at this point in time do feel overvalued. It does seem like there is a lot of money chasing very few deals that are bidding up prices. And I think, private lending is definitely an avenue to take advantage of, as long as you're able to, find favorable terms and a low loan to value, and kind of have some protection there in the event that the market does turn south. Then that's really a smart move. I'm personally starting to do more private lending, because I think it's harder and harder to find viable real estate transactions at this point.
Absolutely. Now I gotta ask you, could you? I guess I was literally gonna ask you if you could do it for yourself on a deal, but that would be like, I guess you could use it from an entity and lend to yourself. Is that a thing?
You may start getting into like self-dealing. I'm not sure, I think we're getting into
Ooh,
some
okay.
tax law
Okay,
stuff,
y'all.
but hey,
You guys got it.
not a CPA
Bring your
either.
accountants, CPAs. All right. We're going to the dark alley here. No, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Just obviously everything you want to do by the book. And I was just curious, just because, for example, like I'm licensed as a realtor. So I pay myself when I buy a home, which is, I kind of like that. But, and I've heard people who even have their mortgage license as well. So I'm wondering if you could do all three. That's full. That's called vertical integration. And then,
Yeah.
but that'd be interesting. No, I'm just curious, because obviously you've been in this space and you're a savvy guy. So, that's super interesting. Let me ask you just on that topic real quick. Do you always charge the same amount of points, stuff like that, or like the same interest? Like, how do you define that? Is there like some kind of rule you follow, or really it's private and it's based on what the contract says?
Yeah, no, it really depends on people's experience level. If you're just starting out, you're going to be more of a risky borrower, in my opinion. And if this is our first transaction, then I'm definitely going to view you as a risk. So that's really part of the reason that a lot of people make deal portfolios too, to show, hey, these are the properties I bought and sold. This is, my experience, quote unquote, your deal resume. So that can be helpful for people that are looking for private money. But yeah, for me, it's usually starts off, hey, I don't really know you. It looks like you've done some stuff in the past. I'm willing to, give you a shot on this deal. And if it's a successful for both of us, then the money will probably be a little bit less expensive next time.
When you say deal portfolio, is that when you're doing like, let's say I have 12 units and I want to get like a portfolio loan? Is that what they're calling it?
No. I guess I'm referring to more of a personal deal portfolio. So where it's really where you list out all of the properties that you've transacted on.
Oh, okay, like a resume. Okay, you were just referring
Yeah.
to that as a resume. Okay, I wasn't sure if
Yep.
you were referring to that from a lending. Okay, interesting. So is that also what you mean by I did see, note funds or is that something different?
That's actually something different. Um,
Let's talk
so
about it, man. What you got
yeah,
going
let's
on?
talk about it.
Let's lift the hood. What is note funds? So first of all, this is something that you do?
I invest in a company that does it. I don't do it
Gotcha.
personally.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, cool. Can you give some insights for our listeners of what that is exactly? Because I'm not sure that I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, definitely. So again, this is kind of playing off my mortgage banking background and kind of
love it, Todd. We love it, by the way.
It's funny how one job can really set you off in such an entrepreneurial spirit, but that's really what did it for me to a degree.
Can I highlight that? We won't forget where we left off. Note funds. I think that's extremely important, and I'm not sure if you know the book Side Hustle Millionaire by Tony Watley. Have you heard of that?
Mm-mm.
Oh, fantastic book, because it's very similar to what I did, right? I'm in the consultant, business analyst, agile systems. I have a 15-team agency. I took the exact same approach because if it works at corporate, we forget as entrepreneurs, it's a proof of concept that you can apply in your own domain. And so I'm a big believer of taking from where you're already eating from and to use it as leverage, because they've gotten to a place where they've had success. So why would you go elsewhere? So I just want to highlight that whether it was by chance or not, I think it's smart to be strategic. If you're going to leverage your 9 to 5, which I think you should, as we all should, just like you're leveraging a skill set, why not go into an industry or a where you'll get transparency, where you get knowledge, and then you can use it later. So now you could be a banker who becomes his own bank. I mean, golly, is that gonna be our title? Roxy, make sure you get that. That might be our title, man. That's fascinating. So I do think that's important, because you did make that comment, and I think it's strategic. The same way that I started, the first thing I did was and I'm kind of using myself as just an example to kind of give some context, because I think, Todd, you've done a very great job yourself, getting my license to learn how to invest. I got my license to help investors, and they kind of took me under their wing, and then I learned along the way. So it was very strategic. So I do encourage everyone to be very strategic in how they pick their roles. But with that said, you were going to say, okay, note funds. Kind of help us understand how that path, is that something that you saw in the banking space that you're like, okay, let me double down on this. Help us connect the dots here.
Yeah, so when I was in the banking world, again, this is back 2008, 2009 when I was getting started, and this is we're in the middle of a foreclosure crisis, right, where people can't pay their mortgages, and as a bank, there's only so much a bank can do before a bank really has to foreclose. They don't really have a lot of options. They can't say, hey, your income has drastically reduced. Well, let's reduce the payment. A bank really can't do that, because you've closed on a document that's been recorded, and it's a legal document, right? So if you're not abiding by the terms of the document, then they have to do what they need to do in order to satisfy their loan. So there's other companies out there that aren't banks, and they're able to buy loans that are in default on for pennies on the dollar. And then they have a completely different tool belt, which they can go in and negotiate with the person who owes the money, the debtor, and maybe negotiate the loan balance down or negotiate the payment down. So just to give an example, let's say somebody has $100,000 mortgage, and for whatever reason they stop making the payment. Then this note fund can go in and buy the note. Let's say they're able to buy it for $10,000. So now they have a note that's quote unquote worth 100,000, but they only are into it for 10,000. So they got a lot of room that they can negotiate, right, with the seller in order to make this a performing note and for it to be profitable for them. So they have different ways of contacting the borrower, and letting them know, hey, we're the new servicer of your loan. We want you to stay in your house or what have you. Let's figure something out to make this work. So, they have some sort of a conversation with the borrower, and, maybe probably have them fill out some financial statements and that sort of thing to get an idea of income and assets and other debts. And then they come up with some sort of a reduced payment that makes it work for all parties involved. So it's more of like a debt workout kind of a strategy that also keeps people in their house, but it's also very profitable for the company that's buying the non-performing notes as well.
Yeah. So I guess what you're doing, just and if you can help us understand, Todd, is you're coming in, you're bringing a solution to a struggling owner, and at the same time, it's very similar to, again, the banks. You're trying to basically capitalize on the interest that you're going to get from this note again, but you are taking some risk, or maybe a lot more risk, but you are banking on the interest that they're going to pay you for the, let's say, life of the rest of the 20 years left on that note. Am I correct?
That's part of it. So that's definitely one exit strategy with a note, is that, you certainly can say, hey, homeowner, let's reduce the principal balance of the loan down to 50,000, and you agree to pay me $250 a month, and at 5% interest until it's paid off, and we'll just call it a deal. So you can make that kind of a deal. Or in the note world, once you have a note that's gone from non-performing to performing, that's a good thing. That becomes a more valuable asset. So, in the same example, if now we have a $50,000 loan that's performing, well, that's worth something in the secondary market. So you can go out and you can sell that loan, and, it's kind of like a house flip. Instead of flipping a house, you're flipping a piece of paper, and boom, you sell the note and you get paid, and, you move on to the next one.
Okay. So just to take a step back a bit, because this is so fascinating. So you're selling it back to Freddie Mac, or is that Fannie Mae loan? Is that who you're selling it back to, or anybody? Like
anybody. So it could be, they're sold to private individuals. They're sold to hedge funds. They're sold to anybody and anybody who wants to own and service a note.
Okay, let's take a step back, because I think this will help even myself and our listeners. Walk us through where you made your profit with that $10,000 note for the $100,000 mortgage. If I said that incorrectly, please do correct me. I just want to make sure that we understand where that capital and that money is made within that transaction.
Okay, yeah, certainly. So going back to our example, we started off with $100,000 loan balance, and the seller was unable to perform. So we bought this non-performing note for, say, $20,000. Okay, so we have $100,000 is what the note is worth, or the amount of money that was put up by the bank originally, but we were able to buy it at a discount for $20,000. So we contact the homeowner, the debtor on the note, and start talking to them about different options that they're comfortable with, and that's beneficial for them, and that's beneficial for the company. So we, in some instances, we settle at, say, $50,000, and after, say, a year or two of the borrower paying on time, then the note suddenly is not a non-performing note, it's a performing note, because the borrower is, beginning to make timely payments again and paying off their debt like they said they would. So that's a good thing in the lending space, and that makes it a much more valuable note. So you can go out and, still probably need to sell the note at a discount. So maybe not at 50,000, but maybe at 40,000. And when you sell the note for 40,000 and you only paid 20,000 for it, then, you have a $20,000 profit.
Wow. Okay, cool. And so, this is fascinating. You can see that the wheels are like spinning. So where you made the money was actually on the negotiation end with the old mortgage. And why do they want to get that? Well, okay, two things. You said 2 years. Was that specifically, is that what a non-performing note? It was that just something you threw it out there where you said if it starts to perform for 2 years, is that the rule? Is it 2 years, or was that just something you threw out as an example?
It's just something I threw out as an example. But
Okay.
at some point in time, a seller is going to look at this and say, hey, this borrower is paying on time. They have a strong payment history, whether that's, a year, 18
Yeah.
months or 2
Got it.
years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it becomes more valuable.
Yeah. So where you made your money in that scenario was actually you negotiating it for 20,000 from, let's say, we're gonna just put Bank of America on blast here, just because we can.
And let's do Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo has been in the news a lot lately.
Oh no, we threw Wells Fargo under the bus. Okay, so for them, why do they want? And again, maybe I am kind of stating the obvious, but I want to hear it from you. Do they just want to get it off their books because it's non-performing? Like, why sell it at such a discount to you? Is it just they've already lost enough money where they might as well get their 20,000 out of nothing or nothing? Is that what it is? Help us understand that why they would give it at such a discount.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of times this could be like a second mortgage or a home equity line of credit. And, really it's worthless. It's worthless to a degree. It's a second mortgage. So in order for them to, probably foreclose on the property, they're going to have to pay off the first mortgage. So, then they have a bunch of capital tied up, and, during the foreclosure crisis of 2008, 2009, that could be tied up for 2-3 years with not getting any sort of a return. So it's just,
They rather get it off their books.
Get off their books because they can't really negotiate it. They are limited in what they're able to do with notes that are non-performing.
Got it. Now that sounds like one note. Why do you put funds behind it? Can you do this at scale and be like, hey, there's 10 of these non-performing. We'll give it to you at 100,000. Is that what you're talking about too?
Well, I invest in a note fund.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
that's what they do.
Yeah. So this is a passive income stream for me. Wow. They're doing all the work, and I'm just sitting back and getting my check and drinking my coffee and hanging out.
And without, again, you can be as non-transparent or whatever as possible. That doesn't matter. Just as far as the ballpark, because we talk about 8%, but stock market, real estate, depending on short-term rentals, you might be at 20%. What kind of returns? Again, you're not saying that this is for everyone, right? You got to put that out there. You'd be like, oh, Ruben said on the show that. What kind of returns, like ballpark, are we thinking of passive income in a fund as such?
Yeah, you're probably looking anywhere from 8 to 12%, I would say, is pretty good ballpark idea.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
So many tools. Listen, before you drop, I gotta ask you, you go through all these, the mortgages, the hard money lending, the investing in a home. I think I started asking you this in the beginning, but if you're to look back, I know you obviously had successful experiments, right? And I think the goal here is for anybody who's listening is how can I even build more on what, Todd said here when he was in a lab? What would the old Todd have done? And I know I don't really like that question because hindsight is 2020. What got you here is, blah, blah, blah. But there are some things that maybe you can reflect on and say, man, I should have really doubled down on this. Or maybe I would actually, restructure my portfolio and go 70% of that because it's just crushing it right now. What are some things that you look back on and you're like, I would have done maybe a little differently with what I know today?
Well, yeah, of course, hindsight is 2020, and we all would have bought Bitcoin in 2010 and, be living on an island now and hanging out.
Stop it. This wasn't supposed to make us feel bad, Todd. We're trying to build on and forward. What do we do moving forward?
Yes. No, I guess for me, the thing that's always been really good to me has been rental real estate. And that's for a lot of reasons, but mainly because, I was able to buy it at a discount so that when I fixed it up, I had equity built in. I had a renter in there who was, paying the bills associated with the property and paying me. So I was making a little bit of money as well. And then I was getting these great tax benefits along the way, and then kind of riding the market as, rental rates and property values have increased over, the last several years. Of course, we don't know what the future is going to hold going forward. We hope that these will continue to increase in value, but, we won't know, for another 5 or 10 years how this current market continues to play out. But I think if you can buy a property right where it's producing cash flow today, then you're really protecting yourself from downside risk. And that if there is a market, correction or fall, and you're still able to rent the property out and cover all your bills and make a little money, then 10 years down the road from now, you're going to be glad that you had that property, because it's probably going to have gone up in value substantially. You're going to have paid down the balance on the loan, and you're going to have made cash flow for the last 10 years, along with some great tax benefits.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Now I got to ask you, because I'm in this space and a lot of our listeners really enjoy this space. It's the Airbnb and the short-term rental. I know obviously the Airbnb has coined a term for short-term rentals and vacation rentals. But I know that's something that you've also experimented in. What do you have to say about that? Is that something you're still actively doing? And why are you doing it if you are still doing it?
Yeah, so I do have a couple of properties on Airbnb, and they have been pretty good this year. I'd say, last year was more of a struggle since we were going through the pandemic, but we're still able to get out some multi-month bookings where people stayed in the property while they were here working, and was able to make it profitable for the year. I think, one thing to kind of be careful about with the Airbnb model is that we don't know about government regulation on the local level, as far as, are they going to come in and start heavily taxing Airbnb properties, or are they going to have some sort of inspections or impose some sort of a rule which drastically changes the model? I live not too far from St. Augustine, Florida, and they're going through a bunch of stuff right now with Airbnb, and they're making all sorts of changes, and that certainly is affecting people's investments and that sort of thing. But also along those same lines, I would say that as more people are buying properties strictly for Airbnb, that is also boosting long-term rental market rents as well. So I'm kind of getting back to the point where, hey, maybe it makes more sense to put this back on as a long-term rental, because there's just no inventory right now for people that are looking. And so you kind of have pricing power to really ask.
No kidding.
Yeah. Oh,
I never really looked at it that way. So you're saying that with the increase, perhaps the increase of individuals getting into Airbnbs, now it's shortened the amount of inventory available for long-term rentals. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly right. Because a lot of people, just due to housing prices right now, you can't really underwrite or make a deal pencil based on necessarily long-term rental rates in some areas. You're buying the property based on being able to put it on Airbnb, and based on being able to get so many nights out of the month, the property rented out so many nights out of the month. But again, I think that there's significant risk there as this continues to play out in everybody's local market. But it is definitely increasing long-term rental rates, because there's less people that are buying these properties and putting them on the long-term market. They're putting it on, the short-term Airbnb market. So since, we're going through supply and demand, so the supply is dwindling, but, the demand is definitely there. In some cases, the demand is increasing because we're going through the population shift as well. So I don't know. It's definitely something to keep kind of on your radar, I'd say.
Yeah, I appreciate that nugget. I hadn't really, that didn't really come up, and I'm glad I went there. So speaking of traveling, speaking of kind of building that lifestyle business, I know I would kick myself that the audience would do the same if I didn't ask you about kind of how you've been able to build a lot of systems virtually, and even businesses virtually. Which one is your favorite, and which one has really allowed you? Because it's one thing to be financially free, and it's also one thing to have that kind of lifestyle freedom. So what kind of business models have helped you do that, and maybe it's something that you talk about with your money coaching?
Yeah, definitely. So for me personally, one of the main drivers behind wanting to become financially free was, A, to have the independence, but B, also to have the location independence, in that I wanted to be able to long-term travel. I wanted to be able to, hang out in Europe until they were kicking me out because, my visa was expiring or what have you. So that was really one of my main motivations, was how do you run a real estate business while you're, in Asia or you're in Europe. So for me, I found a great solution in hiring a virtual assistant. So I have a virtual assistant who really manages most of my properties as far as maintenance requests and making sure that we get our rent, and making sure that maintenance is done in a timely manner and that the residents are taken care of and that sort of thing. Because I knew when I was out traveling and I was out, surfing some surf break out in Indonesia or something like that, I didn't want to get a call about, a clogged toilet. I wanted, somebody that would be able to take that call immediately and to act on it and to get it solved. Because I didn't want those experiences to be detracting from the one that I was having, right there in front of me.
Ooh, I love that. So this was for your long-term rentals, where you had basically someone to pick up the phone, and I'm assuming this person wasn't boots on the ground, but they would be at least a point of contact. Is that how you structured it?
Exactly. Yeah. So I had everything that would get routed to really an email inbox. So whether it was maintenance requests, rent payments, etc., it all went to this email inbox, and it's really this person's job to check this inbox, a couple of times a day. And if something's in the inbox, then they act on it. And if there's not, then they just kind of shoot me an email at the end of the day saying, hey, no maintenance requests or no issues today. And, end of story, go on about your life.
Okay, got it. But you're still building a local team, I guess, or a somebody that would be on site to then be able to respond to those requests, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I have a network of vendors, that I've worked with over the years. So that if there's a plumbing issue, then we have a couple plumbers that they can contact to get on out there. Just like, the AC vendor or the electrician or the general handyman or what have you. So we do have some points of contact for the VA to contact so that they can, get these maintenance requests initiated and get the problem resolved.
Got it. Is there a vendor that's kind of like maybe a national vendor that you would recommend, or is it more of kind of these ad hoc relationships that you've built over time?
Yeah, so I use a company called Bosun Solutions. There's a link on my website, and they have US-based virtual assistants that you pay by the hour. So you're not really locked into, meeting minimums or anything like that. Because of course in the rental business, some months you have crazy number of maintenance requests, and then other months you don't have any. So you don't want to, for me, I don't like to waste money. So I found somebody, that I could pay by the hour and that could handle that. But, you really could do it with any sort of a virtual assistant, as long as you had everything, your own policies and procedures set up to be able to handle it, as well as, the vendors that would be able to handle all of your maintenance and kind of plugged into your system for how you have everything working.
Gotcha. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you had like someone in particular for like maintenance vendors. That's what I was referring to as well.
Okay.
If there was is that, or are those just personal relationships that you made over time, or there's one that you're like, oh, check out this website, there's good people in your local area, just type in your zip code? Is there something like that?
I don't have anything like that. No, it's all personal relationships from really over the years. Yeah.
Yeah, same. That's interesting. Yeah, because we for sure our short-term rentals are out of state. Like I was telling you, and we have with that one flood, we actually met a guy who we stuck with, who's like super good. He's like our new maintenance guy, which happened with the tragedy, but it kind of came in as a blessing. And then our cleaners, it's within our network with as an agent, I can be like, hey, does anybody have cleaners you recommend? And I get tons. So we have like an inside group. But I always like to, for those looking to make those connections, yeah, definitely virtual assistants anywhere. I know there's some great resources there, which we'll include later. But this was really neat. As far as putting this baby to sleep, I mean, you've been able to accomplish what people are seeking for, and I know we talked about a lot of different steps. If you were just to recap it as to, we talked about, playing defense, right? You got to save enough to then start investing. We talked about real estate. We talked about hard money, which was really fascinating. We talked about creating systems, working with VAs, short-term rentals. Note funds. The list goes on and on. To someone who's listening, uh, I know I say experiment wide to identify what works with you and then double down on it. For you, what do you think is the lowest hanging fruit with the knowledge that you have as well as to, I know real estate's an easy lowest hanging fruit, but I know that you've done so much that, looking back and where we are today, if someone is looking to make that saving and start saving a lot of money to put themselves in that position, with all the options that exist out there, Todd, what do you think is the lowest hanging fruit for them to kind of maybe begin that journey earlier than they need to, than they'd like to, or what's that first thing? Is it real estate investing that you would go to, or which one?
Yeah, I think I would encourage people to first understand how you're using your money, where you're spending your money, and set yourself up for success. And what that means really is put yourself in a position where you're living below your means and that you're saving every month. And then that really starts to establish this financial discipline, so that, if you're unwavering to break your budget, then no matter really what happens, you're going to be putting money away every month. And then also, as you start making more money and your offense gets a little bit better, then that also helps you stick to this discipline that you've already established, so that you're able to save even more money. And I think as you're going through this process, you're really going to start to see these results, and these results are really going to excite you. And then you're going to really want to start exploring different options. And for me, real estate is the best option. There's just so many different ways to invest in real estate. And as long as you're buying it right, and that you're, able to close and, be able to start making cash flow soon thereafter, and have a nice little cushion in the event that there is a downturn to a degree, then I think you're putting yourself into a good spot today.
Gotcha. And last thing I'd ask you is, if you've been able to pile on all these experiments, how did you decide what was a good next step for you? Because I could see that there was some kind of natural kind of progression there. How do you identify that in your own experiments of, okay, I've done this, now I'm going to go to that?
I think that's it. I've done this. That was cool, but hey, this looks kind of exciting too. Maybe this is a better thing out there. I've recently, in the last couple of years, have gotten to more commercial property where, I'm completely hands off, and it's very passive. And these are, big projects where, my money's involved, but my time isn't. So I think that that's a pretty cool thing, where, that's really the idea of passive income in my mind. I learned about, passive income from Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad eventually, or first off. And, he kind of sold me the dream of passive income, but to a degree, real estate can be somewhat active. But I think as you get into, larger deals, more units or commercial property or and things like that, then it really becomes a lot more passive, where it's, hey, we have a meeting once a year or once a quarter where you have to do something. And then other than that, you just kind of sit back and relax and get a report every month or two.
Yeah. It seems to me like you're always finding vehicles where, the lever is maybe a little longer, and how can I not be involved, but allow my money to work harder, and smarter. than you need to. So that's interesting. We started to catch on. I think if you re-listen to the episode, you'll be able to find a lot of gems. Todd, I can't thank you enough for coming in here. I know that you're passionate about, being the money coach, helping others do the same. Your website is tightwadtodd.com, which I think is fascinating branding. But where else can is that where we can best find you? Where else can the listeners also tap into the work you're doing and maybe even potentially work with you?
Yeah, the best place to reach me is definitely on the website, tightwadtodd.com. And then oddly enough, I'm the only tightwad Todd in existence. So I have, the Instagram, the LinkedIn, the Facebook. I have like all the social media handles for tightwad Todd as well. So you can find me and connect with me on all of those. But I would encourage everybody to go check out the website. I have some what I think are some really quality articles to kind of help you get started, as well as for those who are deeper on the wealth building path. There's some great articles on there as well. But the one that really stands out the most to me is the chart that I saw when I was in my young 20s, which really changed the way that I managed money and has really changed the trajectory and the outcome of my life thus far. So I encourage everybody to go onto the website and sign up for the newsletter so that you're able to take a look at this kind of game-changing chart, so to speak.
I like that. Building that bridge, forming that bridge. We'll definitely include that in the show notes. If you're driving, keep your hands on the wheel. We'll include everything there. And Todd, I can't thank you enough for coming in the lab and kind of sharing your experiments with us so that we can, I learned a lot from you as well today, and we'll definitely be implementing. That's what we do here. And I appreciate you sharing that with Experiment Nation. And just like that, we are out.